Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in again to another edition of Musings from the Mountains. I am your host slash managing editor of WVSports.com, Keenan Cummings, and I'm joined by
I'm Jared Serre, as always. WVSports.com's. I don't know. I've said sidekick. I'm the Robin to Keenan's Batman. I've got superheroes on the brain, but I've got really nothing else.
he's our staff writer. In case you're
Yeah,
looking for a formal title,
yeah.
quality work there. This is going to be a good show. Quality lead in already. We're going to talk a little bit about spring football and then transition to basketball. Spring football, the spring game's coming up. It'll be here Saturday. Spring practice already in the books almost. We're almost heading into practice 15. Seems kind of hard to believe, right, Jared?
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. It makes me think about how this is the first time. This spring has been the first time in a long time that we, the media, have been able to go and physically watch practice, and to think that, hey, it's already over, and we are. I'm a student, and we're 2 weeks away from summer vacation. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, I was excited. I did not expect to get open practices this spring, so I'm shocked we got anything. So kudos to Neil Brown and West Virginia sports information staff for making that happen. When it comes to the spring game itself, everybody's going to be talking about quarterbacks, obviously. Everybody's going to be watching Jared Dagey, Garrett Green. We're going to be trying to see what's happening, even maybe a glimpse of Will Crowder. What's happening at that position? We've been able to provide some of our thoughts from the open practices. What are you going to be watching other than quarterback, Jared? What's going to be important? What's going to be on your mind?
So I want to get to that in a second, but real quick, something that I'm going to be watching after the game, I can guarantee you that all our good friends on the blue lot, all our friends on social media are all going to be clamoring for Garrett Green to be the starter. You got to make sure you can wade through all that crap. We still got all of summer and fall and all of fall. Please, I beg of you viewers, do not overreact. It's a spring game. Now, outside of quarterbacks, there you can't go wrong looking at an abundance of positions. Me personally, I'm maybe a little biased. I'm really stoked about the offensive line. I played offensive line coming up, but I think this core group that West Virginia has is very intriguing. You return a couple of guys, but then you bring in guys like Doug Nestor, and we don't even have Wyatt Millum on campus and some other guys like that. I think it'll be interesting to, I guess, develop somewhat of a formality of somewhat of a depth chart. I mean, I know Neil Brown isn't about that life really, but it'll be interesting to see where Doug Nestor slots in and with what team he is, and so on and so forth. So I think the offensive line, as we saw last year, kind of saw some up and downs. I think this spring, that's really what I've been paying attention to, and that's what I'm really looking for in the Saturday spring game.
Yeah, I agree with you. For the first time in a long time, West Virginia has some depth on the offensive line. I know everyone out there is crossing their fingers. You didn't jinx it, Keenan. We talk about depth all the time or lack thereof, but you got to feel pretty confident with at least 8, maybe 9 guys right now with what West Virginia has. And that's a testament to Matt Moore, the way he's built that line room over the last couple of years. You look at most of the faces in that room, a lot of them are new guys or really young guys that he's developed. So tip the cap to him. I think defensive line I'll be excited to see as well. It's going to be some hitting, some tackling football. I want to see that. I want to see how the linebackers play, who plays where on linebacker, and kind of that cornerback spot. We didn't get to see Jackie Matthews last time. He was out with an illness. Then one of the unsung heroes, one of the stars of spring for West Virginia, and I want to see him perform, in a key situation. How much work will Letty Brown get work? How are those backup running backs doing? I think there's a lot of things to talk about. Usage of the tight end. I'm the biggest tight end enthusiast in the West Virginia media. I think I've wrote more stories than everybody put together on the usage of the tight end when Jake Spavital first started to bring that along. And so I want to see, do they get into 12 personnel? Do they play 3 tight ends? What will they do there, and how will they continue to develop that position? So a lot of things to look forward to outside of quarterback. There will be more things going on other than quarterback. And I want to echo your sentiment. do not overreact, guys. Do not overreact to what you see. It's a limited sample size of what the coaches are seeing daily. If spring games meant everything, Jordan Thompson would be in the College Football Hall of Fame. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, believe me, growing up having been a Cleveland Browns fan, I am all about developing high and extraordinary expectations early. I understand where all of you Garrett Green pros are coming from. I mean, I've been the biggest Garrett Green stan this spring, but let's put the brakes on here. Make sure, after Saturday, you're coming home. Maybe you went to Kegler's, had some wings, you have some time to digest and reflect. One of those reflections needs to be quarterback is still up in the air. Let's not overreact.
Yeah, and I think I'm not shutting the door on Garrett. I think he's going to play. I wrote that in the 3-2-1 this week. I don't necessarily think that means he's going to start, but I do think he's going to play. He's going to factor in at that position, at least in some packages. He's too athletic not to. He does too many things that Doege doesn't do well. You hit the nail on the head I think a week ago when we were talking about this. If you could put those two guys together, you have almost a perfect college quarterback.
Heisman Trophy winner right there. You put the two of them together, you've got Cam Newton.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but you've got a really competent quarterback. Not to say they aren't competent in their own right, but Green's still coming along. Doege obviously has his deficiencies, but I have been impressed with what I've seen out of his pocket mobility and really his just ability to move. You can tell he really focused on that. So we'll see if it comes to play in the spring game. Basketball season's done with. We've crowned the champion, but roster movement never ends.
Yeah, this is the real season. The off season is the real season, at least in 2021.
Yes, it's become the new norm, and it's only going to get worse, guys. With this one-year transfer rule, expect this every year. I mean, I guess we're going to move ahead before we jump back. Think about next year. If West Virginia returns all their guys, they're going to lose 10-some guys from their roster. So you're going to be having probably the craziest offseason of all time with transfers. But before we get to that, let's move back. West Virginia filled their final available scholarship for the time being. Pauly Paulicap. Yes, it's a real name. Yes, it's a real player.
Yes, it's a real name. And no, he is not a Brooklyn mobster.
No, he's not. He is a basketball player from New York, but a basketball player. Effective 6'8", 225, athletic forward type. I don't know if this is the fairest way to describe him, but I kind of think of a better shot blocking Gabe Osaboyan that can score. That's kind of how I look at him. I think he had 5 or 6 double figure games last year, averaged 7 points per game, 6 rebounds. Really, really effective on the offensive glass. I think he was 54th nationally in offensive rebounding percentage, obviously defensive rebounding. Defensive pedigree, he was defensive player of the year in his league when he played at Manhattan for his sophomore season. So the guy plays with the motor, has toughness, plays defense, and rebound, and shot 55% at the rim. So, I mean, he finishes at the rim. You're not going to have to run the offense through him. You could still play the 4 out, 1 in if he's in the game. I think all those things put together is what Bob Huggins wants out of a big. Exactly. Defensive, rebounding, toughness, motor. We've almost hit the Bob Huggins bingo card. So It's easy to see why West Virginia wanted to add him. Third transfer for West Virginia this offseason. The third also that only has 1 year of eligibility left. So Mountaineers are full. They have 13, actually 14, but Gabe Osaboyan doesn't count. 13 scholarship players right now. That could change. We can get into shuffling the turtle shells a little bit if you want. You still got Deuce McBride making a decision. You still got Derek Culver making a decision, even though he has not announced anything. You still have Sean McNeil making a decision and Taz Sherman. Sherman's scholarship is nada. He's either coming back or he's not. The other 3, if those guys leave, you could possibly see West Virginia add 3 more players, depending on what happens. So right now they're full. You hope they stay full. If this team stays full right now with the way it's constructed, man, I'm not sure West Virginia has had a deeper, more talented roster than they would have next season, especially with the experience they'll return. I mean, is that fair?
I would say so. I mean, but at the same time, though, I urge everybody to be cautious. don't drink the Kool-Aid. I mean, it may look appetizing, but again, as you alluded to, if, let's say, okay, so Malik Curry, Damon Kerrigan, and Pauly Paulicap all have, what you said, one more year left of eligibility this upcoming year. In addition to all the other guys, you said it could be up to like 10. So then what? Are we Spencer Mackey starting two guard? What are we looking at here? As appealing as it sounds, and we've seen not a resurgence, but a growth of the influence of the transfer portal. Maybe you can neglect some of what the future looks like, but regardless, you still have to think about the future. And I understand that, WVU, everybody on the board is like, we got cheated out of a national championship because of COVID. And, and this year we should have won. I mean, they did lose in the round of 32, make of that what you will. West Virginia basketball is in a very interesting spot right now. I'm excited to see what team takes the floor come this winter. But we've got plenty of time until then. So who really knows what'll happen? I mean, it is April. We've seen all kinds of different stuff over these 4 months. I wouldn't be surprised for another, couple curveballs coming along the way until the Mountaineers tip off in the winter.
I'm going to amend my predictions. I think Culver comes back. I think McNeil comes back. I think Sherman comes back, and I am not sure at all about McBride. I think it entirely depends on his NBA projections. And you mentioned, obviously hitting on my point earlier with maybe 10 guys leaving the year before. Who cares? You make a Final Four. You think Baylor's going to apologize for all their guys leaving? No. It's the year. Basketball has become so much of a one year-to-year type deal. And football has too, really. I mean, especially with the prominence of the transfer portal and now one-time free eligibility, you're going to be building your roster from year to year. So West Virginia's figured it out this offseason pretty quickly with some quality players. I have no doubt that now that Bob Huggins has kind of dipped his toes in that pool, he'll be able to do it again. So full for now. You're crossing your fingers, hoping that you're full, heading into the year. You don't have to make any more additions, because if you don't, man, you return everybody from last year's team and address your biggest needs that you had on the roster through the transfer portal. So
now, Keenan, let me ask you a quick question. Let's say hypothetically, all the guys right now that have said they are, testing the waters, so McNeil, McBride, Sherman, let's say they all leave. If you're West Virginia, what do you look to add? Do you look to add another guy who can plug and play right away? Do you look for, somebody who can add depth, maybe come back next year? What, on the hot seat, what do you think would be the next move for WVU?
You'd have to find guys to replace them, because you've got the core of the rest of your roster. You've got what you need. You've got a stretch guy that can stretch the defense in Jalen Bridges. You'd have some bigs that can play defense. You have Malik Curry who could run the point. You need to find some two guards that can shoot the ball, or some wings that can shoot the ball to help continue this. If you want to continue to run this 4-out, 1-in type look, I think that's what you need. And I think West Virginia would be pressed. I think you can find those guys. Obviously, they found Malik Curry to run the point. You could find them, but you'd feel a lot more comfortable if the guys catching the ball and shooting it were Deuce McBride, Sean McNeil, and Thad Sherman. The one I think, I don't want to say they can live without, but I think Derek Culver isn't as big of a blow. I mean, it's a blow, but it wouldn't be as big of a blow just because they've got depth there. But you look at the roster right now, it's pretty much unproven. You don't want to pass that baton to true freshmen. You saw the adjustment it took for those guys I just mentioned to kind of hit their stride. So if you want this thing to be as big as it could be, those guys need to return.
Does Matt Humphrey have any eligibility left?
Matt Humphrey almost set back the graduate transfer mark altogether. But that's a story for another day. Thank you for tuning in again. This has been another edition of Musings from the Mountains.